The winter wind swept across the empty plains as Lucas Reed rode, his old brown horse, toward the small town of Dry Creek. Snow covered the ground, and every breath turned into white mist. Lucas had spent the last 10 years working as a bounty hunter. He had seen dangerous men, abandoned towns, and endless deserts, but nothing had prepared him for what he would discover that evening. Dry Creek looked almost forgotten. A few wooden houses stood beside a dusty road. Smoke rose from 2 chimneys, and the only sound came from an old windmill turning slowly in the cold air. Lucas tied his horse outside the general store. The owner was an old man with white hair and tired blue eyes. Without saying much, Lucas bought coffee and supplies for the road. As he was about to leave, the old man quietly placed a faded train ticket on the counter. Lucas looked at it with confusion. The paper was yellow with age. The words Black Ridge Express could still be read clearly. Lucas frowned. Everyone knew Black Ridge had disappeared more than 20 years ago. The railway had been destroyed during a terrible fire, and no train had traveled there since. The old man spoke softly. "Someone left this for you before sunrise." Lucas asked, "Who?" The old man slowly shook his head. He never showed his face. He only said one thing: "Tonight the last train returns." Lucas stared at the ticket. On the back, someone had written a single sentence. Only the guilty reached the final station. A cold feeling ran through his body. Lucas stepped outside. The sun had already disappeared behind the mountains. Thick fog slowly covered the empty fields. Then he heard it, a distant train whistle. He turned toward the old railway that had been abandoned for decades. A bright light appeared through the fog. An old black steam train slowly emerged from the darkness. Its engine looked untouched by time. White steam rose into the freezing air, and every window glowed with warm golden light. The train came to a perfect stop beside the broken station. No passengers stepped off. No conductor appeared. The only sound was the slow release of steam. Then the nearest door opened by itself. Lucas looked at the strange ticket in his hand. He knew he should walk away. Instead, he stepped toward the waiting train. The door slowly closed behind him. The train began to move. There was no turning back. The last train to Black Ridge. Part 2, The Passengers Without Names. Lucas stood quietly as the train rolled through the dark night. The wooden floor creaked beneath his boots. Warm yellow lamps hung from the ceiling, filling the carriage with a soft glow. The air smelled of old wood, smoke, and fresh coffee. The train looked surprisingly clean. Every seat was polished, and every window shined as if someone had cared for it every single day. Yet something felt wrong. The passengers sat in complete silence. There were about 20 people inside the carriage. A woman wearing a black dress looked out the window without blinking. A young soldier kept his hands folded on his lap. An old priest held a worn book but never turned a page. A small boy sat alone near the back, holding a wooden toy horse. None of them spoke. Lucas slowly walked down the narrow aisle. He nodded politely to several passengers. No one answered. It was as if they could see him, but had no interest in acknowledging him. At the end of the carriage stood a man dressed in a perfectly pressed black uniform. His silver buttons reflected the warm light. He wore white gloves and a tall black hat. His face looked calm, almost too calm. Lucas knew he had found the conductor. He asked where the train was going. The conductor smiled gently. Black Ridge. Lucas asked how that was possible. The town had disappeared many years ago. The conductor simply replied that some places never truly disappeared. They only waited for the right people to return. Lucas looked at the strange passengers once more. He asked why no one was talking. The conductor answered that every passenger carried a burden too heavy for ordinary conversation. Before Lucas could ask another question, the conductor handed him a small brass key. The number 7 was carved into it. Lucas asked what it opened. The conductor replied that every traveler eventually reached the door meant only for them. Then he quietly walked away. Lucas looked down at the key. It felt unusually cold in his hand. As he slipped it into his pocket, the lights inside the carriage flickered. The train whistle echoed through the darkness. Outside the windows, the snowy landscape had disappeared. Instead, endless black forests stretched beneath a pale moon. No stars shined above. No animals moved between the trees. Only darkness followed the train. Then the small boy with the wooden horse slowly stood up. For the first time, someone looked directly into Lucas' eyes. The boy walked closer and quietly placed the toy horse on the empty seat beside him. Then he whispered only a few words. "Do not get off at the first station." Before Lucas could ask what he meant, the train began to slow. Far ahead, through the fog, an old station appeared. Its faded sign carried a single name: Ash Hollow, end of part 2. Lucas remained seated. The words of the young boy echoed in his mind. Do not get off at the first station. The train doors opened with a long creak. No one moved. The silent passengers kept staring ahead, as if they had not even noticed the train had stopped. Then someone knocked on the window. Lucas turned quickly. Outside stood a young woman wearing a white coat. Snow rested on her dark hair. Her face looked tired, but her eyes were filled with fear. She slowly raised one hand. She was asking for help. Lucas stood and walked toward the door. Before he could step outside, the conductor appeared beside him. His calm voice broke the silence. Every choice has a price. Lucas looked back at the frightened woman. She looked real. She looked helpless. He could not leave her alone. Ignoring the warning, Lucas stepped onto the frozen platform. The cold air struck his face immediately. The woman smiled with relief and pointed toward the station building. Lucas followed her through the heavy fog. The wooden door opened by itself. Inside, the waiting room was empty. Dust covered the floor. Old chairs lay broken against the walls. The woman had disappeared. Lucas looked around. There was no sound, no footsteps, nothing. Then he noticed something strange. Fresh footprints covered the dusty floor. They did not lead into the room. They led out of it, toward the far wall. Lucas walked closer. The footprints ended against solid wood. He touched the wall. It slowly moved backward. A hidden passage opened before him. A freezing wind rushed from the darkness below. He held his lantern high and stepped inside. The narrow tunnel led underground. Old mining tracks stretched into the distance. Rusted tools lay scattered across the ground. The deeper he walked, the colder the air became. Then he heard voices. Dozens of voices. Men, women, children, all whispering at once. Lucas could not understand the words. The whispers grew louder. His lantern began to flicker. Suddenly, every voice stopped. Complete silence filled the tunnel. A single light appeared ahead. Lucas hurried toward it. He entered a large underground chamber. At the center stood an old wooden table. On top of it rested a small black box. The brass key marked with the number 7 fit perfectly into the lock. Lucas slowly turned the key. The box opened. Inside was an old photograph. It showed Lucas standing beside 3 other bounty hunters. All of them were smiling. Then his heart stopped. One of the men in the photograph was wearing the exact same black conductor uniform. The picture had been taken 15 years ago, but the conductor standing on the train had not aged a single day. Behind Lucas, a familiar train whistle echoed through the tunnel. The train was leaving. Without him, the train whistle echoed through the underground tunnel. Lucas grabbed the old photograph and ran as fast as he could. His boots struck the wooden tracks while the sound of the departing train grew fainter with every second. He reached the hidden passage and climbed toward the station. His lungs burned from the freezing air. The photograph remained tightly held in his hand. When he stepped outside, the platform was empty. The train was already moving into the thick fog. Lucas shouted and ran after it. The black steam engine continued forward without slowing. Just as he thought he had lost it forever, the last carriage door slowly opened. Lucas gathered all his strength and jumped. His hands caught the metal rail. For a moment he hung above the moving tracks. Then he pulled himself inside. The door closed behind him. Lucas lay on the wooden floor, breathing heavily. When he finally looked up, every passenger was staring at him. Their faces showed no surprise, no relief, no emotion. It was as if they had known he would return. Lucas stood and looked around. The little boy was still holding the wooden horse. The old priest quietly closed his book. The woman in the black dress continued looking through the window. Nothing had changed. Only one thing was different. An empty seat near the front of the carriage was no longer empty. A man wearing a dark grey coat now sat there. His hat covered most of his face. His hands rested on a silver cane carved with the shape of a wolf. Lucas had never seen him before. The conductor appeared beside him. "You made it back. Very few passengers do." Lucas showed him the old photograph. "Why are you in this picture?" The conductor looked at it for a long moment. Then he smiled. Some memories never grow old. Lucas asked who the other 3 men were. The conductor answered quietly, "Your partners." Lucas looked at the photograph again. He remembered every face except one. The 4th man. The man wearing the conductor uniform. It was as if his memory had erased him completely. The lights inside the carriage suddenly flickered. The train entered a long tunnel. Darkness filled every window. Then a deep voice came from the man with the silver cane. "You still do not remember Black Ridge?" Lucas turned toward him. The stranger slowly lifted his head. A long scar crossed his left eye. His cold blue eyes never left Lucas. "You buried the truth there. And now the train has come to make you remember." Before Lucas could answer, the train emerged from the tunnel. Far ahead, another lonely station appeared beneath the moonlight. Its weathered sign carried a single name, Dead Man's Crossing. The train slowed as it entered Dead Man's Crossing. Thick fog covered the platform, and the old station looked even older than Ash Hollow. The roof had partly collapsed. Broken lanterns hung from rusted hooks, and frozen weeds pushed through the wooden floorboards. No wind blew, no birds sang. The entire place felt frozen in time. The train came to a complete stop. This time, the passengers began to move. One by one, they stood from their seats without saying a word. They walked toward the open doors with slow and steady steps. Lucas watched them carefully. The woman in the black dress stepped onto the platform first, then the old priest, then the young soldier. Even the little boy carrying the wooden horse walked outside. Only the stranger with the silver cane remained seated. Lucas looked at the conductor. "Should I leave the train?" The conductor gave the same calm smile. "Every station offers a choice. Only you can decide which one is yours." Lucas stepped onto the platform. The fog was thicker than before. He could barely see the passengers walking ahead. As he followed them, the fog slowly began to clear. His heart nearly stopped. In front of him stood dozens of wooden crosses. It was an old cemetery. Every passenger walked toward a different grave. Some knelt quietly. Others simply stood with their heads lowered. Lucas searched the rows of weathered stones. Then he found one that made his blood run cold. The stone carried his own name, Lucas Reed. Born 1856, died 1889. He stared at it in disbelief. That was impossible. He was alive. He touched the cold stone. Fresh snow covered the date. Someone had recently placed flowers beside the grave. Behind him, a familiar voice spoke. "You should have stayed dead." Lucas turned quickly. The stranger with the silver cane stood only a few steps away. His blue eyes were filled with anger. He slowly removed his hat. Lucas recognized him instantly. His name was Henry Cole. 15 years earlier, Henry had been one of Lucas' closest friends. Everyone believed Henry had died during the Black Ridge mine disaster. Lucas stepped back in shock. Henry looked exactly as he had 15 years ago. Not a single wrinkle had appeared on his face. Not a single gray hair. Henry looked directly into Lucas' eyes. "You left us inside the mine. Then you erased the truth. Now Black Ridge wants justice." Before Lucas could answer, the church bell beside the cemetery rang loudly. Every passenger turned toward the sound. At the top of the hill stood a little girl wearing a red coat. She pointed toward the dark forest. Then she disappeared into the trees. Without saying a word, every passenger began following her. Lucas looked back at the train. Its doors were closing. If he followed the passengers, he might miss the train again. If he stayed, he might never learn the truth about Black Ridge. He took a deep breath. Then he ran into the dark forest. Lucas ran after the little girl through the dark forest. Snow covered the ground. But strangely, there were no footprints, except the ones left by the silent passengers. Tall pine trees blocked the moonlight, turning the forest into a maze of shadows. The little girl in the red coat remained just ahead. Every time Lucas thought he was close enough to reach her, she disappeared behind another tree. The passengers followed quietly. No one spoke. No one looked afraid. It was as if they already knew where the path would end. After several minutes, the forest opened into a wide clearing. In the center stood the burned remains of an old cabin. Its roof had collapsed years ago, and only black wooden beams remained standing. The little girl stopped beside the ruins. She slowly pointed toward the broken doorway. Then she vanished into the falling snow. Lucas looked around. She was gone. There was no sign that she had ever been there. The passengers gathered around the cabin but refused to enter. They simply waited. Lucas stepped through the broken doorway. Inside, everything was covered with ash. A rusted lantern rested on a table. A cracked mirror hung on one wall. Near the fireplace lay an old leather journal. Lucas picked it up. The cover was badly burned, but one name could still be read: Henry Cole. Lucas quickly opened the journal. Most of the pages had been destroyed by fire. Only a few sentences remained. If anyone finds this, do not trust the train. Someone betrayed us before the explosion. The guilty man is still alive. Lucas felt his heart racing. He remembered Henry. He remembered the mine. But he still could not remember the explosion. As he turned another page, a folded map slipped onto the floor. The map showed the tunnels beneath Black Ridge Mine. One tunnel had been marked with a large black circle. Beside it were two words: Hidden Vault. Suddenly the cabin door slammed shut. The lantern on the table lit by itself. The room became strangely warm. Lucas looked into the cracked mirror. His reflection was gone. Instead, he saw 4 miners covered in dust and blood. They were trapped beneath falling rocks. One of them was Henry. He looked directly through the mirror. His lips moved slowly. "You left us." The mirror shattered into hundreds of pieces. Lucas stumbled backward. Outside, the passengers began walking toward the train without a single word. A long whistle echoed through the forest. The train was leaving again. Lucas tightened his grip on Henry's journal and the map. He knew one thing for certain now. The answers were hidden beneath Black Ridge Mine, and someone on the train was trying to stop him from finding them. Lucas ran through the snowy forest as the train whistle echoed across the valley. The silent passengers walked calmly toward the station, but Lucas ignored them. His eyes remained fixed on the last carriage as thick steam covered the tracks. The train slowly began to move. Lucas sprinted with everything he had left. Just before the final carriage passed him, he grabbed the cold metal rail and climbed aboard. The door closed behind him with a loud click. Something was different. This carriage was completely empty. There were no lamps, no seats, no passengers. Only a long, narrow hallway stretched before him. The wooden walls were darker than the rest of the train. Old family photographs hung in crooked frames. Every picture showed people standing beside the same black steam train. Lucas looked closer. His breathing became slow. Every photograph included the conductor. The clothes changed. The years changed. The people around him changed. But the conductor never looked older. In one photograph, the date read 1843. In another, it read 1861. In another, it read 1874. The conductor looked exactly the same in every picture. Lucas continued walking. At the end of the hallway stood a single wooden door. The brass key, marked with the number 7, fit perfectly into the lock. He turned the key. The door opened slowly. Inside sat an old man wearing a dark brown coat. His long white beard reached his chest. His hands rested on a polished cane made from black oak. He looked up before Lucas could speak. "I have been waiting for you." Lucas stepped inside carefully. "Who are you?" The old man smiled. "I was the first passenger." Lucas frowned. "What does that mean?" The old man looked toward the window, where endless snow-covered mountains passed in silence. "This train does not carry ordinary travelers. It carries people who cannot escape their past. Some seek forgiveness. Some seek revenge. Some seek the truth." Lucas asked why he had been brought here. The old man answered without hesitation. "Because Black Ridge chose you." Lucas pulled Henry's journal from his coat. "Someone betrayed the miners." "Who was it?" The old man closed his eyes for a moment. "The one who caused the explosion is still on this train. He has hidden among the passengers for 15 years. Lucas felt a chill run through his body. He thought of every silent face he had seen. The woman in black, the priest, the soldier, the little boy. Even the stranger with the silver cane. Any one of them could be hiding the truth. Before Lucas could ask another question, the old man slowly raised one shaking finger toward the window. Lucas turned. Far ahead, beyond the snowy hills, he saw lights glowing in the darkness. An entire town stood beneath the moon. The sign beside the tracks became clear as the train approached Black Ridge. The train slowed as it approached. Black Ridge. Lucas stood beside the window and stared at the town in disbelief. Every newspaper had claimed Black Ridge had been destroyed 15 years earlier, yet the streets were full of light. Wooden buildings stood exactly as they had before the fire. Smoke rose from chimneys. Horses waited outside the saloon. People walked along the streets as if nothing terrible had ever happened. The train stopped beside the station. The conductor opened the door. Lucas stepped onto the platform. The cold air carried the smell of burning coal and fresh bread. For a moment, everything felt normal. The silent passengers walked into town without looking back. Lucas followed them. The streets were busy. Children laughed as they ran through the snow. Shopkeepers greeted customers with warm smiles. Music drifted from the hotel across the road. It looked like an ordinary winter evening, but Lucas noticed something strange. No one cast a shadow. Every person moved naturally. Every person smiled, yet not a single shadow appeared beneath the lantern light. Lucas felt his heartbeat quicken. He entered the old saloon. Several men sat around a poker table. A piano player quietly performed near the fireplace. The bartender polished glasses behind the counter. Lucas asked where he was. The bartender looked up with a gentle smile. "You are exactly where you belong." Lucas asked what year it was. The bartender answered without hesitation. 1889. Lucas slowly stepped backward. That was impossible. 15 years had passed since then. As he turned to leave, he noticed a framed newspaper hanging on the wall. The headline made his blood run cold. Black Ridge celebrates record gold discovery. The date matched the day before the mine explosion. Lucas suddenly remembered something. He had arrived in Black Ridge on that exact morning with 3 bounty hunters. Henry had been one of them. They had been hired to escort a locked wagon carrying payroll gold to the mine. But after that, his memory became empty again. Outside the saloon, church bells rang across the town. Everyone stopped walking at the same time. Every face turned toward the distant mine. Thick black smoke slowly rose into the sky. The people remained perfectly still. No one screamed. No one ran. It was as if they had already accepted what was about to happen. Then Lucas heard a familiar voice behind him. "You finally remembered the beginning. Now you must remember the ending." Lucas turned. The conductor stood alone in the middle of the snowy street. For the first time, the calm smile had disappeared from his face. Behind him, the entrance to Black Ridge Mine slowly opened. Darkness waited inside. Lucas stood motionless as the entrance to Black Ridge Mine slowly opened. Thick black smoke drifted from the darkness like a living shadow. The cheerful sounds of the town faded away, until complete silence filled the snowy valley. The conductor looked toward the mine. The truth has waited long enough. Then he disappeared. Lucas was alone. He tightened his grip on Henry Journal and stepped inside the mine. The air was cold and heavy, with the smell of coal and burned wood. Rusted rails stretched deep into the mountain. Old mining carts rested where they had been left years ago. His lantern revealed strange marks on the walls. They looked like desperate messages scratched by human hands. "Help us. We are still here." "Do not trust him." Lucas followed the tracks until he reached a large chamber. Broken support beams lay across the ground. Dust floated through the still air. At the center of the room stood the locked payroll wagon. It looked untouched. The iron lock was still in place. Lucas slowly opened the wagon door. Inside were dozens of heavy wooden boxes. He lifted the lid of the first box. It was empty. He opened another. Also empty. Every box had been cleared. The gold had vanished. Lucas suddenly heard slow footsteps behind him. He turned quickly. Henry Cole stepped out of the shadows. His face looked pale, but his eyes burned with anger. "You found the wagon. Now find the thief." Lucas asked where the gold had gone. Henry pointed toward the far wall. "There." Lucas raised his lantern. A hidden tunnel had been blasted through solid rock. Fresh wagon tracks disappeared into the darkness. Someone had escaped through that passage before the explosion. Lucas looked back at Henry. "Who did it?" Henry lowered his head. "I never saw his face. I only saw one thing, a silver pocket watch hanging from his coat." Lucas froze. He remembered that watch. Someone on the train carried the same silver pocket watch. Before he could speak, the mountain shook violently. Loose rocks crashed from the ceiling. A deep rumble echoed through the tunnels. The mine was collapsing again. Henry stepped backward into the darkness. Hurry! The past is repeating itself. Lucas ran toward the hidden tunnel as rocks crashed behind him. Far ahead he saw a man running through the darkness. The stranger wore a long black coat. In his hand, a silver pocket watch reflected the lantern light. Just before disappearing around the corner, the stranger looked back. Lucas recognized his face. It was the old priest from the train. The wooden bridge cracked beneath Lucas' feet. Large pieces of old timber broke away and disappeared into the dark pit below. Dust filled the air as the entire bridge shook from side to side. Lucas grabbed the loose ropes with one hand. The silver pocket watch lay only a few steps away. The stranger with the silver cane calmly watched from the other side. His rifle remained pointed toward Lucas. The bridge will not hold much longer. Leave the watch. Save yourself! Lucas ignored him. He crawled forward across the broken boards. Another loud crack echoed through the chamber. Half of the bridge collapsed into the darkness. Lucas reached the silver pocket watch just in time. He grabbed it and rolled backward as the remaining boards gave way beneath him. The bridge snapped apart. Lucas caught one of the hanging ropes. He swung toward the rocky ledge and pulled himself onto solid ground. Breathing heavily, he looked across the pit. The stranger was gone. Only the sound of distant footsteps remained. Lucas opened the silver pocket watch. Inside was another hidden compartment. A tiny folded piece of paper rested inside. He carefully unfolded it. It was a map. Not of the mine, not of the town. It showed the entire railway leading to Black Ridge. One place was marked with a dark circle. The last station. Below the map were 6 words. The truth waits beyond the final stop. Lucas folded the map and placed it inside his coat. He then looked at the faded photograph inside the watch. The conductor stood beside the priest. Behind them was a much younger man wearing a long black coat. Lucas stared at the face. His memory slowly returned. The man had been the owner of Black Ridge Mine. His name was Arthur Graves. He had hired Lucas and his friends to guard the gold shipment. Lucas suddenly remembered another detail. Arthur Graves had also carried a silver cane with a wolf carved into its handle, the same cane carried by the mysterious stranger. A deep whistle echoed through the tunnels. The train was calling again. Lucas followed the sound until he reached another platform hidden beneath the mountain. The black steam train waited silently in the darkness. The conductor stood beside the open door. His face showed no emotion. Lucas stepped aboard. This time every passenger was watching him. No one looked away. The little boy holding the wooden horse slowly stood. He walked toward Lucas and handed him a folded newspaper. Lucas opened it. The headline froze the blood in his veins. Bounty hunter Lucas Reed accused of stealing Black Ridge gold. The article claimed Lucas had disappeared on the same night as the explosion. The date was 15 years old. Lucas looked up in disbelief. Every passenger was still staring at him. For the first time, they no longer looked silent. They looked ready to judge him. Lucas stood in the center of the carriage holding the old newspaper. His hands trembled as he read the headline again. Every word accused him of stealing the Black Ridge gold before the mine exploded. He slowly looked at the silent passengers. They were no longer sitting peacefully. Each of them was watching him with cold and empty eyes. The little boy returned to his seat without saying a word. The woman in the black dress folded her hands. The old soldier lowered his head. The atmosphere inside the train had completely changed. The conductor entered the carriage. His footsteps echoed across the wooden floor. Without speaking, he walked to the front and struck a small brass bell. The sound traveled through every carriage. Then something impossible happened. The seats slowly moved by themselves. They formed 2 long rows facing each other. Lucas found himself standing alone in the middle. The passengers sat like members of a silent court. The conductor remained at the front. His calm voice broke the silence. Tonight the past will speak. Lucas looked around. What is this place? The conductor answered. Every traveler must face the truth before reaching the final station. Every lie must be judged. The lights flickered. One by one, the passengers stood. The old soldier stepped forward first. He placed a small gold coin on the floor. Lucas recognized the coin immediately. It came from the Black Ridge payroll. The woman in the black dress walked forward next. She placed a burned photograph beside the coin. It showed the mine moments before the explosion. Then the little boy approached. He carefully placed the wooden horse beside the photograph. Lucas stared at the toy. His heart began to race. He finally remembered. The wooden horse had belonged to Henry Young's son. Lucas had carved it as a birthday gift many years earlier. The little boy looked exactly like Henry's son. But the child had disappeared after the disaster. Lucas whispered his name. Samuel. The boy slowly smiled. For the first time, he spoke clearly. You remembered me. Before Lucas could move, the train suddenly shook. The lamps went dark. Cold wind rushed through the carriage. When the lights returned, every passenger had disappeared. Only Samuel remained. He pointed toward the last carriage. The door at the end slowly opened by itself. A bright white light shined from inside. Samuel spoke softly. He is waiting for you. Lucas asked, who? The boy lowered his eyes. The man who planned everything. Lucas walked toward the glowing doorway. As he reached the entrance, he saw a tall figure standing inside the light. The man slowly turned around. Lucas froze. The face looking back at him was his own. Lucas stood frozen in the doorway. The bright white light slowly faded until he could clearly see the man standing inside the last carriage. The stranger looked exactly like him. The same dark hair, the same gray eyes, the same scar above the right eyebrow. Even the old leather coat looked identical. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The train continued moving through the endless night. Lucas finally stepped forward. Who are you? The stranger smiled faintly. That depends on what you remember. Lucas shook his head. You are not me! The man nodded slowly. Not anymore. He walked toward an old wooden table in the center of the carriage. Several maps, old newspapers, and faded photographs were spread across it. Every photograph showed Lucas. Some were taken many years ago. Others looked as though they had been taken only days earlier. Lucas picked up one picture. It showed him standing beside the payroll wagon outside Black Ridge Mine. Behind him, a man secretly loaded wooden boxes into another wagon. Lucas had never noticed him before. The stranger pointed at the picture. You were looking in the wrong direction. Lucas studied the hidden figure. His face could not be seen. Only one detail was clear. A silver wolf-shaped cane rested beside him. Lucas remembered the stranger from the train. The man with the silver cane. The same man who had shot the priest. The stranger nodded. He wanted everyone to blame you, and for many years. It worked. Lucas looked around the strange carriage. Why do you have all these photographs? The stranger answered calmly, because someone had to remember the truth after everyone else forgot. Lucas frowned. What do you mean? The stranger walked toward the window. Outside, snow-covered mountains stretched beneath the moon. Time is different on this train. Memories are taken from some passengers. Others are forced to carry them forever. Lucas felt a cold chill. Did the conductor erase my memories? The stranger remained silent for a long moment. Then he answered, No. You asked him to. Lucas stepped backward. That was impossible. Why would I choose to forget? The stranger picked up a small leather notebook from the table. He handed it to Lucas. Your own handwriting filled every page. The final sentence had been written in dark ink. If I survive, make me forget. Lucas stared at the words. He recognized his writing. He remembered writing many reports during his years as a bounty hunter. This was his handwriting. His own signature appeared at the bottom of the page. Before Lucas could understand what it meant, the train suddenly slowed. Outside the window, he saw towering iron gates standing beside the tracks. Above them hung an old, weathered sign. The final station. Beyond the gates, the hidden truth of Black Ridge waited. The stranger looked exactly like him. The same dark hair, the same gray eyes, the same scar above the right eyebrow. Even the old leather coat looked identical. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The train continued moving through the endless night. Lucas finally stepped forward. Who are you? The stranger smiled faintly. That depends on what you remember. Lucas shook his head. You are not me! The man nodded slowly. Not anymore. He walked toward an old wooden table in the center of the carriage. Several maps, old newspapers, and faded photographs were spread across it. Every photograph showed Lucas. Some were taken many years ago. Others looked as though they had been taken only days earlier. Lucas picked up one picture. It showed him standing beside the payroll wagon outside Black Ridge Mine. Behind him, a man secretly loaded wooden boxes into another wagon. Lucas had never noticed him before. The stranger pointed at the picture. "You were looking in the wrong direction." Lucas studied the hidden figure. His face could not be seen. Only one detail was clear. A silver wolf-shaped cane rested beside him. Lucas remembered the stranger from the train. The man with the silver cane. The same man who had shot the priest. The stranger nodded. "He wanted everyone to blame you, and for many years. It worked." Lucas looked around the strange carriage. "Why do you have all these photographs?" The stranger answered calmly, "Because someone had to remember the truth after everyone else forgot." Lucas frowned. "What do you mean?" The stranger walked toward the window. Outside, snow-covered mountains stretched beneath the moon. Time is different on this train. Memories are taken from some passengers. Others are forced to carry them forever. Lucas felt a cold chill. "Did the conductor erase my memories?" The stranger remained silent for a long moment. Then he answered, "No. You asked him to." Lucas stepped backward. "That was impossible. Why would I choose to forget?" The stranger picked up a small leather notebook from the table. He handed it to Lucas. Your own handwriting filled every page. The final sentence had been written in dark ink. "If I survive, make me forget." Lucas stared at the words. He recognized his writing. He remembered writing many reports during his years as a bounty hunter. This was his handwriting. His own signature appeared at the bottom of the page. Before Lucas could understand what it meant, the train suddenly slowed. Outside the window he saw towering iron gates standing beside the tracks. Above them hung an old, weathered sign. The final station. Beyond the gates, the hidden truth of Black Ridge waited. Samuel stepped behind Lucas. Eleanor Graves looked toward the front door with fear in her eyes. The voice spoke again. "Open the door. This story has gone on long enough." Lucas slowly drew his revolver. He moved beside the window and looked outside. The man with the silver cane stood in the snow. He was no longer hiding his face. The moonlight revealed sharp blue eyes, a long scar across his left cheek, and a cold smile. Behind him stood 6 armed men dressed in black coats. Each carried a rifle. Lucas turned to Eleanor. "Is he Arthur Graves?" She slowly shook her head. "No. Arthur died many years ago. This man is his son, William Graves." He finished what his father started. Lucas remembered the name. William had vanished on the night of the Black Ridge disaster. Everyone believed he had died with the miners. Instead, he had escaped with the stolen gold and spent 15 years hiding in the shadows. The front door burst open. William entered calmly, tapping the silver wolf cane against the wooden floor. His men spread through the house with rifles raised. William smiled at Lucas. "You have done all the hard work for me. You found the gold. You found the witnesses. Now I only need to remove the last problem." Lucas kept his revolver pointed at him. "You murdered innocent people." William laughed softly. "Gold changes people. Fear makes them silent. Both served my family well." Eleanor stepped forward. "Your father destroyed Black Ridge. You destroyed every life that survived it." William looked at her without emotion. "The weak always blame the strong." He raised a pistol and aimed at Eleanor. Before he could fire, Samuel threw the wooden horse with all his strength. The toy struck William's hand. The shot missed and shattered a nearby window. Lucas fired immediately. William jumped behind a wooden table as the bullet splintered the wall. His men returned fire. The quiet house exploded into chaos. Glass shattered. Furniture broke apart. Smoke filled the room. Lucas pulled Samuel behind a stone fireplace while Eleanor crawled toward the hidden chest. William smiled through the smoke. "You still think this ends tonight? You have forgotten one thing." Lucas shouted. "What?" William pointed toward the window. Outside, the black steam train had begun to move. Its whistle echoed across the valley. William laughed. "If you miss that train, you will never leave Black Ridge alive." The train whistle echoed across the frozen valley. Thick clouds of steam drifted through the snow as the black engine slowly began to leave the final station. Inside the house, gunfire suddenly stopped. Everyone heard the whistle. William Graves smiled. "You have one chance left. Chase the train or stay here forever." Lucas knew he was telling the truth. Every strange event since the journey had begun was connected to the train. If it left without him, the mystery of Black Ridge might never end. Lucas looked at Samuel and Eleanor. "Stay behind me." He kicked over a heavy wooden table. The falling wood blocked the doorway for a few seconds. Lucas, Samuel, and Eleanor rushed through the broken window into the snow. William shouted to his men, "Do not let them reach the train." Bullets flew across the frozen yard. Snow exploded around their feet. Lucas fired twice while running. One of the armed men dropped his rifle and fell into the snow. The others continued chasing them. The station stood only a few hundred steps away. The black train was already moving. Steam covered the tracks. Lucas could barely see the last carriage. Samuel stumbled on the icy ground. Lucas quickly lifted the boy into his arms and kept running. Eleanor followed close behind despite her age. The train gathered speed. Lucas knew they would never catch it on foot. Then he heard the sound of hooves. 3 riderless horses burst from an old stable beside the station. Their ropes had broken during the gunfight. Lucas caught the nearest horse by its reins. He helped Samuel climb onto the saddle. Eleanor mounted another horse. Lucas jumped onto the third. The horses raced beside the moving train. William and his men followed only a short distance behind. Their rifles flashed through the falling snow. One bullet struck Lucas' shoulder. Pain shot through his body. He nearly fell from the saddle but managed to hold on. The last carriage came closer. Lucas urged his horse forward with all his strength. Samuel reached the train first. He grabbed the metal rail and climbed aboard. Eleanor followed only seconds later. Lucas stretched out one hand toward the moving carriage. Just as his fingers touched the rail, William rode beside him. The silver wolf cane crashed against Lucas' arm. Lucas lost his grip. He fell hard into the snow. The train continued moving away. William stopped his horse and looked down with a cold smile. The journey ends here. Lucas watched the last carriage disappear into the thick fog. Then, from somewhere inside the train, the conductor leaned out through the final door. He looked directly at Lucas and slowly raised one gloved hand. The train began to slow down. Lucas pushed himself up from the frozen ground. Blood stained his coat where the bullet had struck his shoulder, but he ignored the pain. The conductor stood at the open door of the last carriage. His white gloves rested calmly on the metal rail. He looked at Lucas without speaking. Behind Lucas, William Graves climbed down from his horse. His men surrounded the station with rifles ready. There was nowhere left to run. William smiled. "The train cannot save you forever." Lucas kept his eyes on the conductor. For the first time since the journey had begun, the conductor spoke with a serious voice. "Every journey ends with a choice." Lucas asked what choice remained. The conductor answered quietly, "One man may board this train, only one." Lucas looked toward the last carriage. Samuel was standing inside, reaching out with tears in his eyes. Eleanor stood behind him, shaking her head. William laughed. "That makes the decision easy." He raised his rifle and pointed it at Samuel. Lucas' heart stopped. If William fired, the boy would have no chance. Lucas slowly lowered his revolver onto the snow. William nodded with satisfaction. A wise decision. He ordered his men to collect the gold from the house. As the outlaws walked away, Lucas noticed something hidden beneath the snow. An old railway switch. Its heavy iron handle was only a few steps away. A memory suddenly returned. During his first visit to Black Ridge, he had helped repair these tracks. The switch controlled a forgotten side rail leading into an abandoned tunnel. Lucas looked toward the moving train, then toward the switch. He understood the plan instantly. William stepped closer. "Your story ends today." Lucas smiled for the first time. "No, yours does." He rushed toward the railway switch with all the strength he had left. William fired. The bullet missed by only a few inches. Lucas grabbed the heavy iron handle and pulled with all his weight. The old mechanism groaned loudly. The tracks shifted. The last carriage remained on the main line, but the engine and the front cars suddenly rolled onto the abandoned sidetrack. The train split apart. Metal screamed against metal. Steam exploded into the air. The engine disappeared into the dark tunnel. The final carriage carrying Samuel, Eleanor, and the conductor remained safely behind. William stared in shock. Before he could react, the damaged bridge beneath the abandoned track collapsed. The engine and several empty carriages vanished into the deep ravine below. Silence filled the valley. Then the conductor stepped down from the last carriage. He looked at Lucas with calm eyes. "The final truth is waiting. Come with me." Lucas pushed himself up from the frozen ground. Blood stained his coat where the bullet had struck his shoulder, but he ignored the pain. The conductor stood at the open door of the last carriage. His white gloves rested calmly on the metal rail. He looked at Lucas without speaking. Behind Lucas, William Graves climbed down from his horse. His men surrounded the station with rifles ready. There was nowhere left to run. William smiled. "The train cannot save you forever." Lucas kept his eyes on the conductor. For the first time since the journey had begun, the conductor spoke with a serious voice. "Every journey ends with a choice." Lucas asked what choice remained. The conductor answered quietly, "One man may board this train, only one." Lucas looked toward the last carriage. Samuel was standing inside, reaching out with tears in his eyes. Eleanor stood behind him, shaking her head. William laughed. "That makes the decision easy." He raised his rifle and pointed it at Samuel. Lucas' heart stopped. If William fired, the boy would have no chance. Lucas slowly lowered his revolver onto the snow. William nodded with satisfaction. A wise decision. He ordered his men to collect the gold from the house. As the outlaws walked away, Lucas noticed something hidden beneath the snow. An old railway switch. Its heavy iron handle was only a few steps away. A memory suddenly returned. During his first visit to Black Ridge, he had helped repair these tracks. The switch controlled a forgotten side rail leading into an abandoned tunnel. Lucas looked toward the moving train, then toward the switch. He understood the plan instantly. William stepped closer. "Your story ends today." Lucas smiled for the first time. "No, yours does." He rushed toward the railway switch with all the strength he had left. William fired. The bullet missed by only a few inches. Lucas grabbed the heavy iron handle and pulled with all his weight. The old mechanism groaned loudly. The tracks shifted. The last carriage remained on the main line, but the engine and the front cars suddenly rolled onto the abandoned sidetrack. The train split apart. Metal screamed against metal. Steam exploded into the air. The engine disappeared into the dark tunnel. The final carriage carrying Samuel, Eleanor, and the conductor remained safely behind. William stared in shock. Before he could react, the damaged bridge beneath the abandoned track collapsed. The engine and several empty carriages vanished into the deep ravine below. Silence filled the valley. Then the conductor stepped down from the last carriage. He looked at Lucas with calm eyes. "The final truth is waiting. Come with me." The conductor stepped down from the last carriage. He looked at Lucas with calm eyes. "Follow me." Without another word, he walked toward the abandoned tunnel beside the tracks. Lucas, Samuel, and Eleanor followed him. William hesitated for only a moment before ordering his men to continue the chase. No one wanted to be left behind. The tunnel was cold and damp. Water slowly dripped from the stone ceiling. Rusted rails disappeared into darkness. The only light came from the conductor's old lantern. After several minutes, they reached a massive iron door built into solid rock. The conductor placed his hand on the cold metal. "This door has remained closed since the night Black Ridge fell." Lucas noticed 7 keyholes arranged in a circle. He remembered the small brass key marked with the number 7. He removed it from his coat and placed it into the final lock. A deep rumble echoed through the mountain. The enormous door slowly opened. Behind it stood a hidden underground vault. Wooden shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Thousands of gold bars filled the room. Old chests overflowed with silver coins, jewels, and bundles of money. At the center of the vault rested a large iron safe. Eleanor lowered her head. "Arthur built this vault in secret. No one in town ever knew it existed." Lucas walked toward the safe. Its heavy door stood slightly open. Inside rested only one object, a thick leather ledger. Lucas carefully opened it. Every page contained names, dates, and payments. Arthur Graves had secretly paid judges, sheriffs, businessmen, and criminals for many years. Near the final page, Lucas found one name that made his heart stop. Lucas Reed. Beside his name was a large payment. William laughed loudly behind him. "There it is. The proof that everyone believed." Lucas turned quickly. William and his remaining men stood at the entrance with rifles aimed directly at them. William smiled coldly. "My father wrote your name into that book before the explosion. The whole country believed you stole the gold. No one ever searched for the real thieves. Lucas closed the ledger. You destroyed innocent lives to protect your family. William raised his rifle. History is written by whoever survives. Before he could pull the trigger, the heavy vault door suddenly slammed shut by itself. The lanterns went out. Complete darkness filled the underground chamber. Then a slow voice echoed through the room. The final judgment has begun. Complete darkness filled the hidden vault. No one moved, no one spoke. The only sound was the slow breathing of frightened men. Lucas reached into his coat and found a box of matches. His hands shook as he struck one against the stone floor. A small flame appeared. The weak light revealed frightened faces all around him. Samuel stood beside Eleanor. The conductor remained perfectly calm near the center of the vault. William Graves and his men still held their rifles, but uncertainty had replaced their confidence. Then the flame suddenly went out. Every lantern inside the vault lit at the same moment. A warm golden light filled the room. The heavy iron safe slowly opened by itself. Inside was no longer the leather ledger. Instead, an old mirror stood where the safe had been. Its silver frame was covered with strange carvings. The conductor stepped forward. Every person must face the truth. William laughed nervously. It is only a mirror. The conductor looked at him. Then look. William walked toward the mirror with slow steps. At first he saw only his own reflection. Then the image changed. The mirror showed the night Black Ridge mine exploded. Arthur Graves secretly loaded the stolen gold onto hidden wagons. Young William stood beside him, helping carry the boxes. Moments later, Arthur placed sticks of dynamite throughout the tunnels. The explosion trapped hundreds of innocent miners underground. William watched in horror. The mirror continued showing every crime, every lie, every murder committed to protect the stolen gold. William fell to his knees. His rifle slipped from his hands. No, this is not real. The conductor answered quietly. The truth is always real. One by one, the remaining outlaws looked into the mirror. Each saw the crimes they had committed. Some began crying. Others threw away their weapons. None could escape what the mirror revealed. Finally, Lucas stepped forward. He looked into the glass. Instead of crimes, he saw himself carrying an injured Henry through the collapsing mine. He remembered trying to save his friend. He remembered Arthur Graves knocking him unconscious before escaping with the gold. When Lucas awoke days later, his memory had been shattered by the blast. He had never betrayed anyone. He had only forgotten. Tears filled his eyes. Henry had died believing Lucas abandoned him. Samuel gently took Lucas' hand. My father knows the truth now. He always wanted you to remember. Lucas slowly nodded. Years of guilt finally lifted from his heart. Behind them, the massive vault doors began opening.
Bright morning sunlight poured inside.
The conductor looked toward the exit. One final journey remains. Only then will Black Ridge finally rest. Morning sunlight poured into the hidden vault. For the first time since Lucas had boarded the strange train, the darkness that surrounded Black Ridge began to disappear. Fresh mountain air flowed through the open doors, carrying away the cold silence that had filled the tunnels for so many years. Lucas stepped outside with Samuel and Eleanor. The snow-covered valley looked peaceful. The black steam train waited quietly beside the platform. Its engine released one final cloud of white steam. William Graves slowly walked out of the vault behind them. His rifle was gone. His shoulders were bent. The mirror had taken away every lie he had hidden for 15 years. He stopped in front of Lucas. I cannot change what my father and I did, but I will not run anymore. Lucas looked into his eyes. For the first time, he saw regret instead of pride. The conductor stepped onto the platform. The journey is over. The truth has been found. Justice now belongs to the living. William removed the leather ledger from his coat and handed it to Lucas. Every name is inside, every payment, every crime. Take it to the authorities. Let the world know what really happened at Black Ridge. Lucas accepted the ledger. The names of the innocent would finally be cleared. Henry Cole, the miners, and his own. Samuel smiled as he held the wooden horse against his chest. My father can finally rest. Eleanor quietly closed the lid of the hidden vault. The stolen gold would be returned to the families who had lost everything. Nothing would remain hidden again. The conductor climbed aboard the train. Lucas looked at him. Will we ever meet again? The conductor smiled gently. Only those who still carry unfinished journeys will see this train. The whistle echoed one final time. The black steam train slowly began to move. Lucas watched as it disappeared into the morning fog. Within seconds, the tracks became empty. The train was gone. Only fresh snow covered the railway. Months later, the truth about Black Ridge spread across the country. The stolen gold was returned. The names of the innocent were restored. The families of the miners finally received justice. A small memorial was built beside the old station. At its center stood a wooden horse carved by Lucas. Every winter, travelers claimed they could still hear the distant whistle of a black steam train crossing the mountains before sunrise. Some believed it was only the wind. Lucas knew better. Some journeys never truly end. They simply wait for the next traveler who is brave enough to remember.